Hello.
And welcome back to the Sociology Lesson Series online. In this section, I'm going to be looking at the technique for this type of 10-mark question. The idea here is that you can take this framework for answering questions into the exam hall and apply it to the questions that you'll be set for your final exams. Please take a note of the instructions from the front page of your exam paper, and that is, questions carrying 10 marks or more should be answered in continuous prose. In other words, if the question is worth 10, 20 or 30 marks, that means that you are required to write with full sentences and paragraphs, therefore no bullet points or lists in this particular type of question. All three of your sociology exam papers are worth 80 marks, and you are allocated 2 hours for each paper. This means that we can use the general timing rule for every question on every paper, and that is to spend 1.5 minutes per mark. Therefore, for a 10-mark question, as a rough guide, you should be spending 15 minutes answering this. The good news is that the same command words will be used across different papers and different topics. This means that the same skills and techniques and structure can be used. Obviously, it will have to include information relevant to the different topics, but this question type will appear as question 3 in paper 1 on education, once in section A of paper 2, and once in section B of paper 2, and then again as question 3 for crime and deviance in paper 3. The only thing that will vary from the specific wording here is that on paper 2, depending on which topic you are doing, the item will not necessarily be item A. It could be another letter, but the rules that follow are the same. Given that we know this question type will appear on every paper, there are a few general rules that we can apply here. Firstly, the question is worth 10 marks, therefore we should be spending 15 minutes answering it. Secondly, you must do as the question asks. The question asks you to apply material or applying material from item A, and this means that you must use a quote or hook from the item to answer the question. More on this later, but for the time being, general rule number 2 is to read the question and item very carefully. As always, think very carefully about what the question is asking you to do, and make sure that you pay close attention to every word, including looking out for some very subtle differences in the wording. This could be the use of identities, as in plural, compared with the single identity, for example. Thirdly, since the question will always be asking you to analyse 2 ways, reasons, criticisms, etc., it makes sense that your answer will be in the form of 2 paragraphs, which leads us to the next point. There is no need for a separate introduction or conclusion to this question. Indeed, the examiner's report states these are not necessary and are unlikely to gain additional marks, and they also take up time. Therefore, the focus here really is on those 2 paragraphs. The reason it's so important to read the item in question carefully is because you must use a section of the item selected as a quote, or sometimes referred to as a hook, as the launch pad from which your answer will take off. This quote or hook will form the basis or link from the item to the question you're answering. As well as the hook or quote from the item launching your answer, you must also refer to sociological concepts. We've sometimes called these key terms. Evidence from named sociological studies, theorists and theory, where necessary, is needed in your response to this question. You can refer to statistics if necessary. Relevant examples will always help you to add more detail. But the key thing to remember here is that it will always be necessary for you to develop your answer with reference to sociological evidence. So that's why it's really important that you're learning definitions of terms and the findings of studies. So that's something you really need to focus on as part of your revision. What do the terms mean? What did the studies find? Throughout your answer to this type of question, and this is relevant for all of your essay responses as well, please make sure that you show the examiner the exact relevance of what you are saying. This is sometimes referred to as a chain of reasoning, and it could mean you're using phrases such as "this means that" or "the relevance of this is." This is what analysis is really all about. I once heard of it as milking a concept for all it is worth, if that phrase helps you here. When you're using studies, then you must show how and why the findings help you to answer the question. The significance of this study is, this study shows us, and so on. Nearly there. The last step is therefore quite similar to the first step, but you must select a second, different hook or quote from the item, and then you must develop your second paragraph. Again, we're looking for concepts, studies, and evidence, but be careful to make sure that it is suitably different from your first paragraph. It still needs to answer the question, but you need to go for a different way, reason, point, etc. If you wanted to break the timing down even further, then your 15 minutes that you're allocated for this question becomes 7.5 minutes for each paragraph. So remember, these are the rules for this type of question, and you can use them across all 3 of your sociology papers. And you can refer back to this video at any time when you need a reminder of the structure that your exam answers should be taking.